actually mean this. I would like one of you tonight to actually, who hasn't done a congressional minute again? Do a little research on Jeff Sessions and some of the things that he's doing right now. Because we need to talk about that man, like in depth. Okay? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll give you a couple of talking points. Because I don't even care about the Russia thing. Okay? I don't care about the fact that he lied under oath. I mean, I should. It's called perjury. It's a crime. But let's be honest. How many of us think politicians are honest? Yeah, exactly. Right? So the fact that the man lied, he's a politician. We all expect that. Okay? But no, if you're going to look up, about Jeff Sessions tonight, I want you to look at two things: Black Lives Matter and marijuana. Okay? I want you to look up those two things specifically in terms of what he's about to do with those.
Oh, if you look at that,
Jeff Sessions.
He's the Attorney General. He's the head of the Department of Justice.
You know what? I got the congressional minute tomorrow, okay?
What? He like marijuana as the devil, like it's awful.
I don't know if he said that.
Well, I know.
We'll save it for tomorrow, okay?
No, I got it.
Now in Houston, you don't get arrested for like pot possession.
You're about to.
But like the law was passed yesterday, and that's about to just be like.
And the federal government is going to come in, and they're going to arrest you. Jeff Sessions will arrest you. Okay. All right, we're going to talk, again, some of this is redundant. This is stuff that we've already gone through. Okay, and you see this sort of happen. Obviously, we couldn't talk about elections without talking about incumbency advantage. It's hard to talk about Congress without talking about incumbency advantage. So some of this is a little redundant. All right? Understand, because you will get test questions about this in terms of what is safer, the House of Representatives or the Senate. And you should understand that the House of Representatives is safer. Okay? It is safer than the Senate because when we'll get to this, I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we're gonna have a whole like fun day next week that's all about gerrymandering. No, when I say fun, I mean like we're gonna play games related to gerrymandering. Because when is it not fun to like racially profile? No, that's not what we're doing. But there's an aspect of that with gerrymandering. We'll talk about that. Okay. With the House of Representatives, these are safer than Senate seats in part because of gerrymandering. All right? So, like we've talked about in this class, Pete Olson will continue to stay in Congress for as long as Pete Olson wishes to be in Congress. And because a Democrat is never going to get elected from this district. It's just not going to happen. All right? With the Senate, it's a little less safe, right? There's a higher likelihood of a senator who is seeking re-election losing their position, but that doesn't mean that a lot of them lose their position. All right? And obviously you can't gerrymander in Senate elections, right? Because you're doing that through the whole state. All right? To give you an idea here about some of these statistics, and again, this is out of date, but it's rather indicative of what you see, right? I mean, when we talk about actually highly contested seats in the House of Representatives, there are very few. And in reality, there's a significant number of seats, meaning more than 10%, that are not contested at all. Meaning no one tries to take the guy or gal who's in office out of office. All right? And it's due in large part to the fact that there are safe seats and the other party is not going to waste money running against that individual. Right? I would imagine, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that Nancy Pelosi does not ever face a real challenger. And if you don't know who that is, that's the Democratic representative from San Francisco, basically. If you've never been to San Francisco, it's really liberal. Okay? what happens is, and this is where, in my opinion, it sort of begins to get problematic. If all of our seats in the House of Representatives and the Senate are pretty much safe seats and there's no turnover, that leads to what we call like a permanent Congress or a ruling class, a political elite. There's a number of names for it, but it's highly problematic and it's not the way that it was intended originally. All right? So, ideally you would like to see more turnover. But there are some reasons or some arguments on the other side, and we'll get to those as well. And some of these we've talked about in terms of the actual advantage, right? So the franking privilege, this is something that they love to throw in the AP test in a little multiple choice question to see if you actually know the term franking. Because what I'm sure you've noticed is that some of the AP type questions that you get on tests are really vocab questions, aren't they? Right? Apparently we don't know what horse race journalism is based on Monday's test. Okay? But that's, I mean, basically that question on the test was a vocab question. Alright? Franking privilege, this is free postage. Okay? So if a senator or a representative wants to mail you something, they can do that for free in order to inform you. Okay? They have staffers that are already in place that can help them, patronage, they provide jobs to people, they have name recognition, they have some sort of record or track record, right, so we call casework, they can, and this is what they inform you about with their franking privilege, right, here's what I'm doing in Congress for you. And then they have significant financial advantages, right? Wildly significant. And then comes gerrymandering. And this is probably the biggest advantage. Right? One, realize that a number of states, not a majority, but I mean if we look at our little map up here, right? How many states did we see that have the little number? Like 1, 2. Utah's got 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So, I mean, more than a dozen states had a change in their number of representatives as a result of the 2010 census. Does that make sense to you? Yes? Okay. When you change the number of seats in the House of Representatives that you have, what do you have to do then?
Redistrict.
You have to redistrict. Okay? This is where gerrymandering comes in. Alright? Because as you redistrict, you redraw lines. Those lines are arbitrarily drawn at the state level. Okay? Which means whatever party is in charge at the state level, they're the ones who redistrict. They're going to redistrict in a manner in which it's favorable to them. Alright? Again, when we have our whole little gerrymandering day, we'll go over this in a lot more detail. Alright? In order to understand this, we know what a census is, right? Hopefully. My guess is that you were all way too young in 2010 to understand what was really going on. But you'll get like information in the mail that they'll ask you to fill out and send back to the government. They actually hire people every 10 years and they'll go door to door. So I was living in San Diego at the time and it was highly comical because the little girl that came to the door to like do our census information for the house I was living in had no idea what to write down. Because there was 4 grown adults living in the house and like nobody was married. Just roommates, and so she couldn't figure out who the head of the household was. Yeah, it was comical. And, so redistricting, we just talked about this. Okay, it's done by the state legislature. Again, make sure you understand that because whoever controls the state legislature has that power to control what is going on. All right, and the term gerrymandering, because obviously that probably strikes you as a little odd. in terms of term. It comes from Elbridge Gerry, who was a founding father type individual up in Massachusetts, who drew some really odd districts in the state of Massachusetts that they said looked like salamanders, which is why they called them gerrymanders, which is how we ended up with the term gerrymandering. Not that you'll ever be asked about that. All right. What you can do when you are gerrymandering, okay, is a couple of things. You can, what we call packing or cracking, and when you're packing, what you'll do is if the Republicans are in charge, they'll take as many Democrats as they can in the state and pack them into one district, okay, which you would have like a Democratic super district, and that district then will always elect a Democrat no matter what, right? They might have 85 or 90% of the population in that district being Democrats. But then what you do with the packing idea is you then give in all of the other districts in the state a slight Republican advantage to them. So if you have a situation where it's 50-50, and you can still pack it to where, if there's 5 districts, you could end up drawing lines to provide, even if it's 50-50 in terms of Republicans and Democrats in your state, you could have 1 Democratic district and 5 Republican districts. Right? Cracking is the other idea. This is trying to divide all the Democrats and trying to lessen their influence. All right? So that way you give them a slight minority in every district in order to try to continue the power for whatever party is actually in office at that time. All right, so some of the effects of it, whoever's in power stays in power. All right, again, it's the state legislature that is doing this. They're going to draw it in a manner that is beneficial for the state legislature. And it creates safe seats that we've talked about. It also creates some strangely shaped districts, which we'll have fun with here in a few days, and minority majority districts. And there are requirements in terms of how you redraw district lines. Okay? So there are instances or issues as to how you redraw district lines that are not always easy to follow. Alright, so for instance, you have to have roughly equal population. So you cannot have one district, excuse me, can't have one district with 1 million people and another district with 100,000. Right? Not fair. It violates Baker versus Carr, which is a Supreme Court decision that basically says one man, one vote. Right? That should be easy. That case should actually be real easy for you guys to remember, right? Because my name's in it, right? And I'm one man, and everybody should vote for me. Okay? One man, one vote. All right? 2 district lines must be contiguous, which means you can't have a break in them. All right? And then with Shaw versus Reno and some other cases, but Shaw versus Reno is the important one, race can't be the primary factor. Okay? Can't be the primary factor. All right? We'll move on to the structure of our Congress, right? The bicameral legislature, the structure of it. We talked about this. Understand that there are some British traditions that move into this. So the parliamentary system in Britain, they have 2 houses, right? They have an upper house, it's the House of Lords. They have a lower house, it's the House of Commons. All right? We create 2 houses in part based on that British tradition, but also in part because of what we talked about a couple days ago, right? Bicameralism helps protect against an overly powerful legislature. The Senate operates as a check on the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives operates as a check on the Senate, right? That way one legislative body cannot pass whatever laws that they want, all right? We talked about this. The House of Representatives is for the people. The Senate is for the elites, right? So again, This is modeled after the House of Commons. This is more modeled after the House of Lords. All right. Now, our actual powers. Okay, and this is what you see in the actual Constitution. Okay, so these are congressional powers. Congress can levy taxes. They have that right. In fact, if it's financial, the power belongs to Congress. Actually, I'll take this one step further for you. If you get a question on any test in a government class that says, who has the power to fill power in here, okay, and you don't know the answer, it's probably going to be Congress. Okay? Because in reality, the Supreme Court doesn't have many powers, period. And presidential powers are relatively easy to understand. Right? He gets to control the military. He gets to meet with foreign leaders. There you go. Alright? So, Congress gets to levy taxes, borrow money, coin money. Right? All of that stuff, anything that's financial in nature is congressional. Right? And specifically which house? The House of Representatives. Right? The House of Representatives is what controls money in the United States because that is the house that is closest to the people and it is our money. In which case you get a say in it. Okay? And then they get to regulate commerce as well. So foreign, interstate, and Indian commerce is actually listed in the Constitution as well. Okay? In reality, you can take this and really throw it into foreign commerce if you're of that ideology that Native American reservations are actually sovereign soil for whatever that tribe is, right? Then they're really foreign governments that exist inside the United States. And so it's still sort of foreign commerce. And Congress gets to establish weights and measures. For the life of me, don't understand why we're one of like 3 countries in the entire world that is not on the metric system, but whatever. You know what the metric system is, right? Millimeters, centimeters. We're not on that system. All right. Again, they can punish counterfeiters. They control the monetary supply. A bunch of other things that they do here. All right. I do want to go down here because I want to make sure that you understand these 2 concepts. All right. Because this is something that is commonly associated with the President of the United States because the President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief. Okay. The President of the United States does not get to declare war. Declarations of war can only come from Congress. Okay. When is the last time we declared war, Mason? Any idea? No. No idea. Take a guess. How many wars do you know of? What's the most recent war that you know of that you think Congress might have actually declared a war? Afghanistan. Robert, what do you think?
I was gonna say the same thing.
You're going to say the same thing. Alexis, what do you think?
I'll disagree with those 2.
You're going to disagree?
I'm going to agree.
You're going to agree.
Yeah.
Anybody want to disagree with them? Lauren, what do you think?
I feel like
Korean War?
Vietnam. Korea or Vietnam?
Korea or Vietnam, War on Terror?
As long as they go for it. Maybe that's.
Not
Isn't
one of
the
you
war
is
on
correct yet.
World War II.
World War II.
I was gonna say that.
Trick question. We're gonna declare war.
Well, North Korea declared war on the United States, yes, but I don't care about Kim Jong-un. And that little pudgy boy is irrelevant. Well, here's the thing. Have we declared war on ISIS?
No.
You can't, because they're not actually a country. And in fact, to declare war on ISIS is to recognize them as being an independent nation. So in reality, you don't want to do that. You can't declare war on terror either. Right? Because that's a declaration, that's like a war on some ideology. You can only declare war against a human or some sort of human entity. You can't declare a war against an ideology. All right. Congress also raises and supports an army. This goes into that monetary policy. So, if Congress is the only one that can declare war, why have we been in so many wars since World War II?
Money.
Did you have a question?
No, just asking what the answer was.
To what?
Your question.
Okay. So why have we been in so many wars?
We emerged as a superpower.
President.
The president. Okay, the president gets to move troops around however he sees fit. Okay, but that doesn't mean that Congress actually declares war. And in fact, Congress theoretically could stop the president from moving troops at any time that it wanted. Right? Because all they would have to do is defund. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you send people to war, it's expensive. It's incredibly expensive. Right? Because you got to pay for fuel to ship everything out there. You have to increase the pay of the soldiers. They don't have to pay taxes anymore. That's actually kind of fun. In a combat zone, you don't have to pay taxes.
Is that what you joined?
What? What'd you ask?
Is that what you joined?
Is that why I joined? No, I didn't join to not pay. I'll be honest with you. When I was in the Marine Corps, I'm not 100% certain why I paid taxes anyways. It seemed a little redundant to me. It's like paying yourself. Right? I mean, in reality, if you're a federal employee, to simplify things, they ought to just drastically decrease your pay and stop taking taxes out. Because you're literally paying yourself. Implied powers, these are based on the elastic clause. What's the other name of the elastic clause? Do we know? Necessary and proper. Okay? Alright? These are things that are utilized from time to time. Some of them are deemed sort of more necessary than others. Okay? Some of them it's really easy to claim that they're under the elastic clause, like the Air Force. Okay? Obviously, the Army and the Navy are listed in the Constitution. There is no Air Force listed in the Constitution because there were no airplanes in the 1700s. Obviously, once airplanes exist, the creation of an Air Force is not outside of the realm of sort of congressional power. And now there's a part of me that does not understand why, because what was the Air Force prior to like 1956 when it was created? Anybody know? It was the Army Air Corps. That's all. It was part of the Army. I mean, the part of me doesn't understand why it needed to be its own branch. But yeah. What? What allows something to be deemed necessary and proper is an excellent question, because that's highly subjective. There's no real answer. I mean, there's not. If you go back to Jacksonian democracy, there were issues in the early United States as to whether or not a national bank was necessary and proper, because there was a lot of infight over that, over what was or was not possible. Okay, in terms of checks and balances, a lot of our checks and balances reside with the Senate. That probably doesn't surprise you. The Senate gets to approve presidential appointments. They get to approve treaties. All right. The Senate is actually who tries impeachment cases, although the House of Representatives is who brings about impeachment. All right. The other checks and balances, we talked about this. The president is elected by the House if there's no electoral majority in the Electoral College. The Senate gets to pick the VP. All right. Powers denied to Congress here. We know that there's not many of them, right? So no ex post facto laws. We've talked about that with civil rights and civil liberties. What is ex post facto laws? After the fact, right? You cannot tell me today that what I did a week ago was illegal and you're now going to prosecute me for it if it wasn't illegal at that time. All right? We'll stop there. and we'll get into leadership tomorrow. And again, I'm going to try to speed through that because you're not going to get like specific questions about, you know, well, you might. You never know.